Sweet. I'm going to hit record. Okay. Whenever you're ready, go for it.
Hi, this is Kyle Kuhn from Iron Vision. You are listening to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, and I'm just here to remind you to live a life without limits.
Well done. Iron Vision. Now I have to change my webpage. That's all good. All right. Thanks. Let me hit stop. I'll be right back.
Yep.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Peter J. Stavros. Thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
So you are at Peter J. Stavros. Am I saying your name right? .com.
It's the Greek way. Yeah. The Kentucky way is Stavros, but the Greek way is Stavros. So.
Stavros, whatever. I'm sure you answer to both if there's food involved.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about your book and what you're most excited about in your writing life these days.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for having me again. My book's called The Thing About My Uncle. It's a YA thriller, and I never thought I would write a YA book of any type.
Yeah.
And I just had this narrator, the voice of the narrator in my head, this 14-year-old boy. And the story developed from there. It's from my experience living in Eastern Kentucky and sort of like I kind of tapped into the vibe with my with one of my nephews as well, and kind of just had this idea for a book of this sort of this lone kind of gruff, not that I'm gruff, but this guy living on his own, and all of a sudden his nephew has to move in with him, and they kind of learn from each other and they get to know each other, and there's like family secrets are revealed, and there's twists and turns, and then at the end there's like a big conclusion. So it's kind of cool. It came out a few weeks ago. It's getting some pretty good reviews, so I'm excited about it.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah.
I'll say this. I love reading. I've never really thought about writing.
Okay.
Not really. Just because then I know what happens.
Well, sometimes I don't know what happens. Like I'm working on something now that has no ending to it. So I'm really stuck on that. So
I get it. I had this dream that sort of was a dream of a movie trailer, and I have no idea where it's going. But I want to see the trailer as a trailer, and then I want to see the movie as a movie, just so I can tell where the hell it's going, So
right.
that I'm curious about. But
right.
The two kinds of writers, it's like the gardener and the architect. I don't know if you've ever heard that. It's like Stephen King always said he was like the gardener, right? So he just goes in his head and walks around the garden in his head and finds ideas, and then, ooh, I like that. Let's write that down. But he has no clue like where it's going, right?
Wow.
Well, okay. If you're a Stephen King fan, you'll know that he's notorious for horrible endings.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm a big fan. In fact, his novella, The Body, was like an influence of mine working on this book.
Oh, that's Stand By Me. Right?
Yeah. So
okay.
I like the idea of putting like these young people in a situation that's very adult,
right?
And then kind of just seeing how they work their way out of it.
I love that. That's actually really cool. That's kind of like the Stranger Things vibe. Yeah. And the Stranger Things guys did a really good job of capturing the essence of the 80s.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I'm an 80s kid, so I grew up in the 80s.
So. Yeah, I get it. Okay, well, this is Vroom Vroom Veer. So before we talk about you and writing in the book, we got to go back in time and talk about how you got here. So you didn't grow up in Kentucky, right?
I did, yeah, Eastern Kentucky. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I was born in Queens, My dad was up there for he was working for the FBI back then, but we
Wow.
only lived there for a couple of years, and then he grew up in Eastern Kentucky as well, so he wanted to come back home. So
Wow. Dad was a Fed.
he was in New York City. Yeah, he's got some great stories too, by the way. I need to
I bet.
write some of these down. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go pick your dad's brain. So, okay. So you did grow up in Kentucky. Okay. So when you were in high school, what sort of, say like you're like, I don't know, 16, 17, were you on the college prep track?
I was, yeah, I was a
Okay.
complete overachiever.
Gotcha.
I just wanted to go to you know,
A good
big
school.
university, either an Ivy. I ended up going to Duke. So I just wanted to, studied all the time. Didn't really do a whole lot of, I mean, I had friends and stuff, but I just wanted to get my studying done and just move on to, my life, I guess.
I get it. So you weren't screwing around.
I don't think so. No, I don't think I did. I think I was a good kid.
I was thoroughly and totally screwing around. Now, I have a friend that we were friends for like, geez, probably before kindergarten, which is rare and awesome that we still
Mhm.
get to hang out and chat. So, yeah, I know like as a kid, like a young kid in the 80s or probably like late 70s, I remember walking by Radio Shack and there
Yeah,
was this like text-based computer and it
yeah.
had this program called Eliza on it, right? And that was sort of like a chat bot that was like, not really a chat bot. You could chat with it, but it was nothing like Chat GPT. It was more like a game, right? But it was really, really fascinating. I was like, there's no way my parents can afford whatever the hell this cost. But it really got me going down that road of like, I got those little like Radio Shack electronics kits.
I remember those. Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
wires.
Yeah. It was awesome. I had like a
Yeah,
ton of those. And I
yeah.
learned all kinds of stuff that I didn't even know
Circuits
I
and
was
stuff.
learning. Yeah. Signal flow, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it really shaped me. And then later on, I became a computer nerd.
Oh,
But
wow. Okay.
yeah. But okay. So me, by the time I got to high school, I was like, I think I sold my first computer for a boombox because I was kind of done, right?
Yeah.
My interest had waned, and I was as soon as I got to like 14, I was like, wow, girls are awesome, and that's all I cared about. Anyway, so not you. So good for you. So you end up going to Duke.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what like going to college was like for you.
That was completely intimidating because you go I remember waiting for my freshman dorm room. I was standing in line talking to these other kids, and they'd like gone to like Harvard summer school or Yale summer school or outward bound programs, and I just been like hanging out at the pool, in Eastern Kentucky during the summer. And I'm
Okay.
like, oh man, am I going to fit in here? What the heck's going on? But eventually, you kind of like it's a big enough school, so you find out the group of folks that you kind of gravitate towards. And I
Right.
remember I was like really into we said off the air. I was into college radio. I was into that. I was into the drama kids. I really liked hanging out with them because they were like
Yeah.
their personalities were completely different from mine because I'm more quiet, reserved, or whatever. And these kids were like always on. I just really like loved their energy. So
Outgoing. Yeah.
yeah. And it's just like completely amazed me. But yeah, so I found a good group of kids to hang out with, and I still, they're, a lot of my friends, to this day. So it's, been like 40 years. So yeah,
Wow. So drama kids. I like it.
yeah,
Did you do any
yeah.
plays yourself or?
I wrote plays. I was in some
Oh, wow.
screenwriting classes,
Holy cow.
and I still write plays to this day. But yeah, but yeah, I definitely liked hanging out with them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I did theater when I was in high school. And then a little bit like right after I joined the Air Force, I was in 2 plays at my first Air Force base. Being in those plays made me realize just how much I sucked as an actor. Like,
I could never do that. Yeah.
I realized I am really bad at it. I mean, even in life, I mean, like, it was like, I was kind of like, it's hard to say. Like I was a pretty good singer, a crappy dancer,
Wow.
and kind of a bad actor, but I could memorize lines.
Okay.
Right. So like
Yeah.
I did really well at like Master of Ceremonies, like MC
Oh
for
yeah.
like the base talent show. I kicked
Uh-huh.
ass at that because I was just basically doing a David Letterman impersonation.
Okay.
And it was fun. It was just easy, off the cuff, stupid, right? But writing jokes, I did stand-up comedian.
Oh wow.
That was horribly difficult and I was bad at it. Right. So, hey, I was still like 18 or 19 and learning these things that I thought I might like to try. And okay, bad at acting. Don't do acting. Bad at stand-up comedian. Don't do that. Now, MC, I still kind of like. I think sort of like podcasting is a little bit like being an MC.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going. Keep the
You're
flow
just
going. Yeah.
hanging out.
Yeah.
And, it's not like I have to do a whole lot of prep, right? Now, like I couldn't I know there's people out there that just podcast like a college professor, completely different skill. Right? I don't, my guest is my entertainment, right? So you're here entertaining me and hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
If I'm laughing and having a good time, it'll be a good show, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So you survived Duke, right?
I survived Duke, but I still, when I graduated, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Right. So I had an English degree with like an emphasis on creative writing.
Interesting.
I'd taken the LSAT and completely bombed it because it was the day before fall break. And I just wanted to hit the
Party.
road. And
Yeah.
yeah. So I completely bombed it. And my advisor says, well, law school is probably not for you. So, okay, fine. So then after graduation, I went to grad school for a bit. I went to study writing in Boston at Emerson College, and then in the summer at Harvard. I did that for about a year, and then I really loved the writing programs and again my fellow students. But Boston was an expensive town. I was like selling T-shirts from a push cart, so.
Right. You got
And
to
I
make a
remember
buck. You have to learn how
I
to
had to make a buck, yeah. But I
Right.
remember I thought it was interesting. One day I was out on the street selling my T-shirts, and a woman one of my classmates from Duke, she comes walking by, and she has the whole business suit outfit on, briefcase, and I'm like, oh hey, blah blah blah, and she looked at me, and I'm like, sweaty T-shirt selling Boston logo T-shirts from a push cart, and she just kind of looks at me, and she's like, oh my God, and she just like took off walking, like, what happened to you? And I'm like, no, but I'm going to Harvard grad school, really.
Wow. Yeah. No judgment. Yes, lots of judgment.
So anyway, yeah, so I did that. And then, but like I said, I wanted to start working. So I came back to Kentucky and I wrote for the AP for a couple of years as a reporter,
Okay.
which was really kind of honed my writing skills. What I didn't like about that so much was just I was constantly getting transferred. I guess in that type of industry to sort of move up the chain, you got to like go
Change
to different bureaus.
markets. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a couple of years of that, and I got a little bit discouraged, and I figured, well, I'm still young enough. Let's give law school another chance. And so I studied really hard. Really, I just studied like over a weekend because my sister had been studying, and so
Wow.
I borrowed her prep books. I was like, yeah, and let's just figure this out. So I studied over a weekend, blah blah blah. Did well enough to get into the state school. So went to law school.
And your heart was really in it.
Oh my God, I can remember like looking for a place to live, and I'm just like, what am I doing?
I get it.
Why am I doing this?
You wanted to get
But I
paid.
did. I wanted to get paid, and then you do get paid because, like, you get that first big job, and it's a good paycheck, and you get a bonus, and you got like the travel and all this other stuff. So you're kind of just boom, and then that's where you're kind of rooming, for next 15 or so years.
Wow. So what sort of law did you do? Did you do like not like court law, but like?
Yeah, I was court law. I was in
really?
litigation. I was private practice. I was litigation for 10 years, like really high stakes kind of IP infringement, corporate,
Yeah.
corporations
High
suing each
dollar
other.
stuff.
And
Yeah.
yeah. So it didn't suit my personality at all because I'm just kind of like sort of like a laid back. I'm non-confrontational, really. I try to be, and it was always just conflict over. You're just arguing over,
Money,
discovery,
basically.
depositions, motions, everything. So yeah, it just completely wore on me.
I bet. I bet. Yeah. And your heart's not in it, right?
No, but like I said, you're getting that income, and it's like, and you're like kind of,
I think,
kind of stuck. Really.
I learned a lot of lessons while I was in the Air Force. And I had this weird sort of like knack of making people see that like I had a like really weird Midwestern Protestant work ethic, right? Like, and not a lot of folks have those, right? You don't know you're like this weirdo from small town Michigan that went to church and listened to his parents mostly,
Mhm.
But people like see that and they're like, ooh, that guy's good. I mean, he might, get me in trouble on occasion, but he just never stops working. He's like the Energizer Bunny, right?
Yeah.
And I constantly backed myself in the jobs that I really didn't like.
Yeah.
And one of my bosses said, like, if you ever get a job that you don't like, don't do it well.
Good advice. Yeah.
The military is so cool because like, even if you're in a really shitty job that you hate, it's not going to last forever.
Mm-hmm.
At some point
Right.
you get to leave, especially if you're overseas, right? Like the day you land on an overseas assignment, the day you're going to leave, more or less,
Okay.
and even if it slips a little, you're still going to leave. Right. And then the other good thing is you got a boss you hate. Don't worry. They're going to leave.
That's good. I had a few of those.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. So anyway, okay. So you're also doing like lots of running and marathoning, right? During this time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had to. I was just like so super stressed that's
Right.
it's a release for me. So yeah, I was actually up to a point where I was like doing like 2 marathons a year, like one in the spring, one in the fall,
Yeah.
triathlons, riding my bike, all sorts of stuff, just to kind of like, clear my head, because I was working like,
Right.
10-hour days sometimes. So yeah.
That's crazy. But just to burn off
Yeah.
that stress. Well, everybody needs
Yeah.
that.
I was super stressed. Like,
Yeah. So did you get into those like charity rides and charity like fundraiser
Yeah.
thingies?
Yeah. And actually, yeah. And my wife and actually, we still do. We fundraise for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. So yeah, we do these long rides like every year.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I did a volunteer thing for when I was in massage school in California. And I volunteered for this same Century ride, and it goes along PCH. It's for
Oh, wow.
one of Maria Shriver's charities. I don't remember which one. But that's when I realized that these people riding this Century ride, they like are committed to doing this. It's not everybody gets to do that ride. Only
Yeah.
the top whatever people that fundraise like the most get to do the
wow, okay.
ride. Yeah. I was
wow.
like, wow. My like just lazy kind of attitude, kind of like, yeah, working's fun and all, but geez, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But then
I've done that.
go ahead.
I've done I've done one Century ride, and that's enough. Like I don't have to do another one.
I get it. These guys were wiped out. But
Yeah, it's a long day.
I asked like, why? What's your motivation? And he was like, it's an amazing ride.
Yeah, I'm sure like
Yeah.
Pacific Coast Highway. I'm sure it'd be beautiful there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't do that if there's not a ride, right? Because
Right.
they block off traffic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you can't do that ride. You can't just go,
Yeah.
I'm going to go do a Century.
Right. Yeah.
You could, but it's going to be a lot more difficult. It's going to take a lot longer. There's not bananas and water and Gatorade every so many
Exactly. Yeah. Donuts.
miles. Right? So
Yeah.
anyway, that's when I learned. I was like, okay, all right, interesting. So I learned all about charity and like people competing to do something ridiculous and stupid is what,
Exactly.
but fun,
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so at some point in 2011, you had like a bit of a scare. So let's get into
Yeah. So,
your big veer, as we like to say.
my big fear. Yeah. It was Valentine's Day, not that I'm a romantic guy, but that's when it happened.
Okay.
My wife and I were going to have get one of those heart-shaped pizzas from a place down the street and open a bottle of wine, just kind of have like a laid back Valentine's Day. And that morning, yeah, my stomach wasn't feeling good. It was weird though because like I felt fine the weekend before. Like this was a Monday. On that previous Saturday, I'd run like 10 miles through the park. Nothing was wrong at all. But it was just like I knew I could kind of sense something was going on with my body. So we had to postpone it. And yeah, I just kept getting sicker and sicker as the week went on.
Wow.
And so I knew my body, from training and stuff. I'm just like, this is not right. So I went to the doctor at the end of the week and just my regular physician, and
Just like a
he wasn't
routine
sure what it
appointment
was.
kind of idea.
Yeah. And so he just took some, had to take some tests or whatever. But yeah, he couldn't figure it out. So in the meantime, yeah, I was just kind of really steadily declining. It got to the point where, I couldn't even go into work. I'd switched jobs at this point. I was in-house counsel for a company, and yeah, I had to work on the couch basically until I couldn't work on the couch anymore. And so this went on for a few weeks, and then finally on March 1st, I had a colonoscopy, and never had I been more excited to have a colonoscopy, but I wanted to know what the heck was going on because I
Wow.
wasn't doing very well at all. So I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which I'd known about because shortly after my wife and I were married, she came down with ulcerative colitis. She was able to like keep hers in check with medicine. The doctors gave me different types of medicine, and it wasn't helping at all. I was continuing to lose weight. Like I was about 200 pounds, I guess, and I'd lost about 50 pounds like during this time.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I couldn't. I was
You
having
just
like
couldn't eat, right?
I couldn't eat, and everything I did eat was like from the fast track out.
Right.
And so,
Yikes.
so finally on March 21st, like I've got all these dates in my head because it's like, so
Yeah.
on March
It's
21st, I went into
traumatic.
the hospital. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was admitted to the hospital. I'm like, okay, good. Finally, I'm gonna, they'll just load me up with like IVs and be fine. And so they took a X-ray of my stomach, and I was kind of just passing out. I've been falling asleep. I didn't know what was going on, but I remember being wheeled back into my hospital room after the X-ray, and I can remember seeing the nurse talking on the phone, and she seemed like really urgently and seriously talking to somebody. And I just had like a sinking feeling that it was about me. And so when I put me in my room, and I was gonna like drink like a soda, 7 Up or whatever. She's like, she took the can away, and she's like, no. She's like, the doctor wants you in surgery right now. She's like, and your colon's just like leaking everywhere, pretty much.
Oh my God.
So I had to have like emergency surgery that night to have my colon removed. And
Wow.
so yeah, that began the year long, sort of ordeal there.
Wow. That's scary.
Yeah, yeah, it was super scary, but it was super scary. But then it was also like, okay, well, good. At least now it's getting fixed because like for a
It's a
period of what, like,
relief because now
yeah,
like you
now we
actually
know what we're
have
up
an
against,
answer. Right.
right? And again, having dealt with this with my wife, I knew what this procedure was. I knew the procedure to take out the colon, and I mean, I'm not a doctor, but you replace it with it's called a J pouch, which is basically the small intestine kind of pulling double duty for the big intestine. So it all kind of works out in the end. But yeah, I had to have I had an ostomy for a year, and I had like organ failure. My feet were like swollen up. Like I'm a runner, but I couldn't even walk again because my feet had like 30 pounds of fluid because I was having like
Yeah.
kidney issues
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. You can't. Yeah.
crazy time.
Your what do they call that? The lymphatic system is just stuck. Right.
It was just crazy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
You
was
can't
unbelievable.
eliminate any toxins at all. So your body
Right.
becomes like super toxic. Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't even
Ugh.
lift up my legs.
Oh my God. Now that's
So yeah,
gotta
so
be
that
awful.
it was crazy. Yeah, especially like I said, as a runner, and I just remember like,
You can't even
I
walk.
mean, I
You're
couldn't even
struggling to
walk.
get to the bathroom. Ouch.
Yeah, yeah.
Jesus. You
So
don't want to
yeah,
wish that on
so that
anybody.
yeah. So
Ouch.
I was in the hospital for like 3 weeks. That was like a week in the ICU, and then the other, the rest of it was like 3 weeks. And then, over the next year, I had to have 2 more surgeries to kind of reconfigure my insides,
Sure.
put everything back together and put everything back inside where, and so, yeah, it was nuts though. But like, the thing is though, it's like, it was also kind of like an epiphany for me too, because as a lawyer, once I went to law school, like the creative part of my brain kind of shut down and I couldn't write anymore, nothing. Um,
Wow.
lying in the hospital room and I finally conscious and I asked my wife to get me a notebook from the lobby shop downstairs because I'm like, man, this will make a good story. And I was like super motivated, just like
Wow.
start
Yeah, yeah,
writing. I
yeah.
was like
It
this
all came
whole
back.
other,
Like, yeah.
yeah, it all came back to me. Like I was super motivated to write. And
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I was definitely discouraged and scared and everything, but I kind of knew, like I had something told me like, well, this is going to work out. It'll be all right. So,
I think I've been there too. Like when you're like hyper stressed and, just sort of like vrooming, what we call vrooming, right?
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
you're making the money, right? And you're, like doing stuff like doing marathons. So you're fit, right? But your brain doesn't have a whole lot of bandwidth. It's just like running at 90% or 99%, like all the time.
right.
Right. Yeah. So you don't have any space in your brain to have those ideas anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
It's
Yeah,
full.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was writing, but I was writing like legal briefs, so
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
creative. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Right. But when you're sitting there thinking about like, geez, I might not make it out of here. Right. But you've also got tons of time on your hands, right?
Uh-huh.
Where you're like awake and not working anymore. And
Right.
suddenly those things that you shut off
Just opens up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 It's so weird.
Yeah.
Being a human is weird. Okay. So,
Yeah.
so that's
Because I mean, your
when,
body does stuff that you're not even like aware of, really. Because I would have no idea. Like, had I still been, I don't, a lawyer, I would never, pursue this other path that I'm on. So,
right,
yeah.
right, right. So how did that, after you basically stabilized the health thing, like when did you decide like, I got to make this shift and stop being a
I know.
full-time lawyer?
I know, because it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be.
No,
Because,
it's not. Well, you
after,
need money.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So after that year, I went back to work and it was so crazy because they had preserved my office the way it was like the last time I'd been there, right before
Right.
I got sick. And it was almost kind of eerie. It was like kind of reminded me like it was almost
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
dang, did anything even happen this past year? Am I right
Right.
back where I started?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like
And
going back to an old TV show you don't want to watch anymore.
yeah, exactly. So and
It's like,
but then
ugh.
again, it's just like so easy to fall back in the routine. So I went back to this job and then I switched jobs to one that I thought might be less stressful. But the whole time I was just like really kind of disappointed in myself because when I was lying in the hospital, or convalescing at home with my wife, I'm like, I got to do something else. I got to be a writer. I got to go back to what I wanted to do.
Right.
And yet, like you said, I mean, you've got you need the money, you need the benefits,
Right.
you need all that. So I was writing though. I was continuing to write, and I was writing short stories and short plays. And with every short story that got published and play that got produced, I kind of like got a little more confidence. I'm like, oh, maybe I still got it. Maybe I could still do this.
Right. You're
So I started. So
reawaking
I
that
started.
original creative writer guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Right. Right.
And so I was doing more writing, and when I was home, I wasn't. I mean, the job wasn't as demanding as like when I was in litigation, but I started working with a life coach. It was a woman um, I went to college with, not the one who saw me with the push cart, but a different one.
Not
And
sweaty t-shirt girl. Okay. Gotcha.
yeah, so and so she's an attorney or was an attorney herself, and I think she works primarily now with attorneys who kind of want to do something else. And
Sure.
so
Okay.
I worked with her for a year to just kind of like help me get out of this rut that I'm in, and because I want to go back to being a writer. So we worked for like well over a year, just like
Figuring out. Right.
helping me to get out of my legal profession.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's hard because it's like
It's
you're
so
making
hard. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And we had a joke about it because my office at the time, it was just like 10 feet across was where my boss was, 10 feet across the room. And she kept saying, all you got to do is walk 10 feet across the room to resign, And I was carrying like that. And I
I get it.
carried my resignation letter with me. I constantly had it. I'm like, God, this is the day I'm going to resign. This is the day I'm going to resign. And so finally, I was in my performance review of all things, and it wasn't going very well. So it was nothing about my legal skills, but just like, oh, you
They
got to
could
be a team.
tell that your heart wasn't in it, basically.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just like, let me stop you right there. And I reached into my folder and I pulled out the resignation letter that I'd been carrying around with me, and just kind of slid it across, and like that was it. It just felt like a weight had been
Huge,
lifted off my
huge weight.
shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it weird? Like I can understand. It seemed like like say like Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, right? They really love what they're doing. They're very identity invested in that thing that they're doing. So walking away from it has got to be really hard, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that when do I need to quit, right? Or like Brett Favre, for crying out loud, he quit like 3
Yeah.
times.
Right.
And it makes sense for like people that really love it, right? But you and me, right? I didn't love being in the military. You didn't love being a lawyer. It's
Nah.
still difficult.
Yeah.
And it's not the same difficulty, right? But it is.
Right.
I just quit another job that I didn't really like either, right? But there's something about that thing about, I think we get programmed that like, who the hell are you if you don't have a job? How are you going
Right,
to
exactly.
provide?
Right.
How can you be a man? What are you going to do? Right.
Right.
Who will
You got
be?
to go to an office. You got to go into an office, and give them your time for 8 hours, 9 hours a day, whatever.
It's so weird how
Yeah.
I think we're all addicted to that. Sort of like, we don't know what to do with ourselves if we don't have
Right.
like a job, right?
Right.
It's so weird. Or that job, you can have a job, but maybe one that you really like. Okay. So, all right. So I get it. You struggled. I remember very similarly, I had already de facto told my boss that I was going to quit. I just didn't tell him when. And I was just dragging my heels. And then when I finally sent out the email, everybody emails now, I felt that same thing, right? That like, thank God I did that.
Yeah. I wasn't like, I thought I'd be scared, but,
Right.
waking up the next morning, I without a job, but I was just like so freeing, so liberating. I don't
Yeah. So, okay. So when was that? When did you officially?
That was actually March of 2020. So then, like the next week is like when the
March
world
of 2020. How
Yeah.
perfect timing.
Yeah,
Oh my
I know.
goodness. And then the next week you were like, man, I should have hung out for another 2 years. Did you instantly regret it as soon as lockdown showed up? I don't know.
No, it's kind of the opposite, because I think once lockdown showed up, then I would have been stuck in that job. I would have felt like I couldn't leave them.
That's
it's like
true. Okay.
short-handed.
Yeah. Right.
So I thought the timing was kind of perfect. And then,
Yeah.
then I was home and everybody was home. So it was like, I didn't feel like
You weren't
so
missing
out of
out on
place.
anything anymore.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
And my wife was here working as well from home. And so yeah, I just started writing. I had this idea in my head for a novel, a different one that we're talking about. But but yeah, and I just wrote that. And when I was finished with that one, it was still the lockdown. And I still didn't know what the heck I was going to do during the day. So that's when I wrote the thing about my uncle, the one that just came out. So.
Yeah. Wow. So let's talk about the book. So like,
Yeah.
where did it come from? Just like an experience that you had that was personal to you, or where did the original idea come from?
I always wanted to set a book in like Eastern Kentucky, where I grew up, and I clerked for a judge up there too. So, and I always like this idea of like sort of like a wiser, older guy who kind of like has to like mentor a kid who's kind of like lost his way. Like in my story, the narrator Rhett, he gets kicked out of school. He's having a tough time at school. He gets kicked out, and so his mom's a single mother, and she's kind of frazzled and doesn't know what to do. So she sends him to live with his uncle in Eastern Kentucky to sort of like homeschool him and sort of set him straight. And these two have never met before. Well, they briefly had been together, but it's been like 10 years since they, knew each other. And I don't want to give too much away, but the uncle has a backstory that ties into the Rhett's backstory as to why his dad is no longer in the picture. And so they begin to uncover these secrets Rhett does, because we see everything from Rhett's point of view. and he slowly like begins to make sense of what's going on and what his uncle's up to and why his uncle's like living sort of like this reclusive life when he used to be, you know, with the family in Louisville, but he's gone on to Eastern Kentucky to be by himself, and we kind of like figure out what's going on there, and then the past comes back to come after them.
Wow. That sounds fun.
It's cool. I really I enjoy like I said, like the writing part was like the easiest part. I mean, I the first draft came out, I wrote that in like 6 months or whatever, and then it's just gone through rounds and rounds of edits, and I think it's got really really tight, and yeah, I can't get it any better than how it is, and it's gotten some pretty decent reviews too. So I'm kind of
So
excited about that.
was it planned to be a YA from the start? Like, did you start there?
I just
Or?
had this. No, I wanted a thriller. I wanted this sort of mystery. I wanted this mysterious character
It's kind
who
of
lives in
almost like automatically YA when your protagonist is 14, I suppose.
exactly. That's right.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
makes sense.
But yeah, and it was like I'd written a novella earlier. It's called Tryouts. It's about this 14-year-old boy who's just trying to make his varsity basketball team, and it's like that same voice from that character that I developed into the character for my book. So I really like. I liked how the voice came out. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. So all right. So what are you doing for money now? Because writing doesn't make a
Well, I'm still a lawyer, but
good for
but
you.
I'm part-time and remote. So I kind of just I work with these agencies and I'll come in and fill in for like a legal department
Okay.
if they're short, a lawyer or something like that, reviewing
Okay.
contracts.
It's
Super,
yeah, yeah.
there's no office
Lawyering
politics
on your
involved.
terms.
Right. Just, and it's good work. It's like interesting. The clients, so a wide array of industries, from beverages to the skincare to tires, it's just, I'm learning these other industries. But like I said, it's, I come and go as I please.
Okay.
And like there's no performance reviews.
No
There's
boss.
no
No
boss.
hierarchy.
Right. Exactly. And so,
Wow.
and you're not like stuck on like the fast track. I'm not grooming, anymore. I'm sort of just
Sure.
like coming and going.
You're
So,
lawyering as it comes at you, sort of idea.
right. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it gives me plenty of time to write as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And it pays the bills. So,
it pays the bills. And yeah, we've downsized anyway. So, but yeah, it does help to have money.
I only ask that because it's like I've known lots of people that write books. It's almost like now people write books as like marketing. You're not doing that. You actually, you don't do that for creative kind of like a nonfiction or fiction writer,
Right.
You want to sell the book.
Want to sell books and maybe some movie rights, some film rights too.
Yeah. Yeah. I have you ever heard of an author called Scott Sigler? He's not that famous, but he, in the early days of podcasting, he basically had been writing his whole life. Right. And he was in the horror genre, sort of like a mashup of sci-fi horror comedy almost.
Oh, wow.
And he just decided to give all of his books away as like audio podcasts.
Okay.
And he used that to basically, like build up an audience. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I think because I found out about him because I was listening to other podcasts, and he's an amazing voice actor. Okay. The books are great. I mean, I have since bought his books. But I think the enjoyment of them would have been a lot less had I not listened to like the beta versions on the podcast,
Okay.
because he's just really, he does all the voices, the amount of effort and work that he does in these, it's like 10 hours of, or more, right, of radio play. And he's doing it all in a closet by himself. It's like, you gotta be in love with what you're doing in order to put, and you could tell, it was just awesome. So anyway, you can do what you want, but there's always that test of like, how bad do you want to do this?
Right.
Yeah. Cause it's going to be work.
I'll definitely work.
Even when you're doing things that you love, it's really a lot of work.
yeah, writing's the least of it, and that's the editing and then selling it and marketing and all that. So yeah,
Totally.
but I do kind of sneak around to neighborhood book boxes and stick my book in there. So get some readership
I,
going.
I
So
have
yeah.
a question for you. Like, how do you get your book in the library? Does that happen automatically, or is that something a publisher does?
Yeah, there's like I think different routes to. I've been actually requesting my book from the library, but there's like different services too that'll get the
Yeah,
book in the
because
library.
not all books are in a library.
Right, I know.
So there must be a process.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
the publisher must work with somebody on that. But yeah, in the meantime, I've just been like emailing, the library. Hey, you should carry this. You should carry this book. Because I've written like some short story collections as well that I've
Right.
self-published, and I've put those up on Amazon and stuff. And I actually have a couple of those that are in libraries. There's a service, I forgot what it was, but they put them in the different libraries because I have a bad habit of Googling myself, and sometimes my books will come up like at the Salinas, Public Library in California. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So,
Wow. I figured like once you're in a library system, you're in all library systems, but apparently not.
yeah, I don't know. I think they have to request them. I don't know.
It's weird.
Alerting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I get it. So, what sort of like authors did you like when you were a kid? I know
Yeah, no, I
we
like
said Stephen King already.
Stephen King was one of my favorites. Yeah, and then like I also like just dialogue, like Sam Shepard. I really loved his plays, and I studied a lot of plays in
Mm.
college, so I read like a lot of his plays. And I realized like he was like towards the end of his life, he was just living like just an hour from Louisville. So I didn't,
Oh wow.
otherwise I would probably would have stalked him outside of his house or something like that. But I didn't realize that. But
I'm not
yeah, so I
familiar
like,
with Sam Shepard. What's a famous thing that I might know?
he does like, it's like a lot of family conflict. So I kind of like, um, there's one called True West, A Lie of the Mind. But he's also an actor as well. So I mean, he was an actor, but he
Oh,
also a
that's Sam
playwright.
Shepard.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
Barry Childs was one of my favorites. So yeah. I
Interesting.
like playwrights, and then I like to read like a lot of nonfiction too. I like to read biographies.
Okay. So, what's your favorite Stephen King books? Did you like his horror or did you like the other stuff?
I did like this horror, and after reading that though, then reading The Body, I'm like, wow, this is really. I mean, he could
It's
really like,
completely different. Yeah.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Have you ever read the Dark Tower series?
No, that's on my list, but no,
Yeah, it's
it's long, right?
yes. Don't commit to the whole thing if you don't like it.
Yeah,
Just, dip your toes in with like book 1 and if you like it then you might want to keep going. But I read that sort of like in the middle of my Stephen King kind of like reading journey and I really loved that, right? Like
yeah,
that was like the kind of stuff like, oh my God, Stephen King, that's awesome. I read some of his other stuff and I didn't like it at all.
yeah,
Because he's so diverse. Like,
right,
I
yeah,
think I read like Needful Things, and it was one of these things where it was like this. I don't know what the hell it was, but it was like this magical evil creature that had a antique shop that were with cursed items or something. I guess. I quit. I was like, this is stupid. I'm totally okay with doing that. It's like I don't care about this, but yes, I get you. So, okay. So we're getting close to wrapping up here. So let's talk about how folks can best get in touch with you. So
mhm.
Peter J. Stavros, and it's STAVROS.com, right?
That's right, yeah. And I've got because I've written some other books, and I've written a ton of short stories. My links are there, and I've got a
Right.
contact page if you want to reach out. So yeah,
Right, right, right. Yeah. And still lawyering too. Is that on the
still
same
going,
page?
yeah. But don't reach out to me about that.
That's a different web page.
Yes, that's correct. Let's focus on the writing.
Yeah, I got it. You just want to talk about the writing. I get it. And so I like the lessons that you learned, Let's talk a little bit about like what you learned after like you thought you were going to die there.
Yeah, it's just you got to find people who are going to support you. And like number one was my wife. I mean, she was there. She moved into the hospital with me. She was
Oh my
there.
goodness. Wow.
Yeah. she slept, right next to me on the cot. And then when we came back home, it's not like we live in a mansion, we live in a Cape Cod, but I wasn't able to go up to the stairs to our bedroom. So we kind of just camped out in the living room for like months on end, pretty much that whole
Wow.
year. So
Wow.
she was like she helped, change my bandages. I had like an open wound on my belly, to let it because of infection or whatever. So she was changing my bandages,
Yeah.
feeding
She
me,
became your nurse.
and my nurse, my number one fan, my coach, all that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So yeah, just find people to support you and ask for help and look for help. Like I said, I worked with a life coach because I couldn't do it on my own. I couldn't figure out how to walk 10 feet across the room to resign. So I just
It is
find people
hard.
that are going to help you.
Yeah. 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 I like the always bet on yourself. That's
Yeah, I got a t-shirt that I wear all the time. It's called, yeah, that's when this first started, actually wearing it now underneath here, but yeah, that's the main thing because it's like it's risky, but you gotta take the risk. So yeah.
I think people in our generation maybe were like, we don't want to be, you get hit over the head. At least I did of like, who the hell do you think you are? You don't get too big for your britches, buddy. Right.
Yeah.
And that's
Exactly.
great. It's a really great lesson of humility, but also don't sell yourself short. Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I had so many people telling me that when I was in the military, because I would always be like, yeah, whatever. Right. You know, and always trying to push off any sort of praise. Let's just get back to work. Right. Right. But you're right. I mean, you do have to be, you have to bet on yourself. I think
Yeah.
that is an important life lesson. You can't just
Yeah.
be so humble that you just want to, crawl in a hole and die,
Right. 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 And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail either. I got a tattoo on my arm that says "fail better." So it's like you can fail, but learn from your failures.
Yeah. I think, you don't want to be like, there's different kinds of failure, right? Like in different sorts of risks, right? Can I afford this risk? What's the worst thing that can happen if this just goes completely and totally bad, right? Like,
Yeah. Right.
I waste all this money and nobody cares. That's okay. As
Right.
long as I can afford it,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
At least I
Yeah.
tried, right?
Right, exactly.
If it,
And especially like I found like as a writer, I mean, you fail constantly because it's just such a
yeah,
subjective industry. People, I would get so many rejection letters for this novel and other things and they would start off, "This is great. We love the writing, blah blah blah," and at the end it's like, "But it's not for us," And it's just like, why? Why is that for you? It's just like it drives you nuts. It's just like, wow, okay. It's just something, it's just one of those things. People either get it or they don't get it, but it doesn't mean that it's, bad. It's not for them. So,
right, right. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, it's almost like a writer and a comedian have like that. You have to have really tough skin, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because it's
Because
like,
like, as a lawyer, like you get a legal opinion, and it explains to you why the ruling is one way or the other. But a
okay,
rejection letter as a writer, they don't tell you anything.
no, it's like, this is really good. You did really well. You're writing it. We could work with this, but we don't want it. It's like,
Right.
how can you not take that personally?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you have to not, right? You have to,
Right.
it's
Oh,
like
I
a
remember the
skill.
first rejection I got. I was just
Yeah.
devastated. Oh my God, I'm terrible at this. But then you just got to keep plugging away at it.
Yeah. That I would imagine like a life coach would come in handy there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, I got I remember this colonel while I was in the Air Force. He used to be a pilot. Most pilots used to be pilots, but now he wasn't. He was an acquisition officer, so program manager kind of guy. But he had 7 rejection letters for the Air Force Academy on his
Oh,
wall.
wow.
Yeah. And he loved them. He was like, this is the first time they said no.
Oh,
And
interesting.
this
That's a
is
good
the
idea. Yeah.
7th time they said no. And he saved them all. I was like, wow, you had a really good dad or uncle or somebody there
Yeah.
teaching you about the world, because those were badges of honor for him. And I was like,
Yeah, good for him.
yeah, exactly. It's like, that's the way you ought to be. Pete, this has been a blast.
I enjoyed it, Jeff.
Yeah. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for about an hour.
Thank you.
You have a good one.
Okay, you too, Jeff. Thanks.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.